Fire used to be about freedom, and now it's just another product that rich people bought and ruined. I discovered fire while making under 20K, and less than 10 years later, I was retired by the age of 30. Coming from a background of food stamps and Section 8 housing, I was focused on fire not to get rich, but to escape hustle culture and the trap that it seemed like capitalism really had me and my family in at the time. In this video, I'm gonna walk you through what lean fire really is and why it works, how the wealthy co-opted fire, and why if you're young and broke or grew up without much money in a working class household, that you're actually really well equipped to go on this fire journey. Finally, I'll touch on what to focus on if your goal is freedom, not wealth. OG fire was a radical idea. Financial independence, retire early. The idea that you could buy your time back from capitalism by living small and saving big. Lean fire is a subset of fire that helps you retire on just enough to get by. It covers your basic expenses so you don't need to worry about food, shelter, etc. That's the version of fire that I think works for most people and makes the most sense. However, there are other versions of fire like fat fire, where you'll hear people say, oh, you need between 5 and 10 million to retire. I think that version of fire that you hear about a lot, that fat fire idea, is kind of a warped version of fire because you're hustling for way more than you need to, and it really is just to allow you to keep up with the Joneses. The result of that is that fire stopped being about freedom and started being about striving for status in disguise. Most fire influencers have high-paying jobs, retired with a huge nest egg, and grew up upper middle class or wealthy to begin with. Their advice seems relatable, but it assumes 100K plus salaries, family help, and financial safety net. Their version of frugal still includes Teslas and international travel, and they rarely mention how not having the same privileges that they had makes the fire game very different for other people. So now we talk about why working class skills make fire more achievable. The fire movement and fire conversation is often guided by people who started out rich or upper middle class, or who have worked 100K plus high-paying jobs for so long that they've gotten used to those luxuries and forgotten what it was like to live on less, and they could never imagine going back to making 30K a year. However, when I first came across fire, that's exactly where my mindset was. I was just graduating from college. I had grown up in a very poor household. My mom was a single mom with 3 kids who I don't think ever made more than 30K in a year. So I was very used to living on less. And that's why I think it's actually a benefit sometimes to not come from these richer backgrounds if you're trying to fire. You already know what it is to look at the prices in the grocery store and not just grab anything off the shelves. You already know what it is to go without some of these big luxuries that other people can't imagine not having. You'd never buy a $20 salad. You're used to being reasonable in your expenses and not feeling like you have to have the nice big house. My original goal for fire was to live in a tiny home, which was all the rage in like the 2010s, that I was gonna build by hand and put on some land in rural North Carolina. I wasn't planning to have some massive house. I wasn't trying to save for kids' private school or anything like that. Now I ended up being able to retire on much more than I had originally planned. I live in an actual apartment now and not like an RV in someone's land. But because I had that kind of frugal version of fire in mind, it didn't seem so unattainable to me. I was able to set out on that journey and make a plan to achieve that goal without it feeling like, oh, okay, this is never gonna work because I have to save up millions and millions and millions of dollars. And that's what's really important, having the right mindset so that you know that it's achievable and you don't give up before you even started. Financial independence is not about becoming a millionaire. It's about being able to opt out of a life that you don't wanna live, of jobs that you don't wanna work, having a plan to get into a position where you don't have to do that anymore. So what can you focus on to try to achieve this goal? It's making sure to find a job where you can establish some sort of savings rate. For me, because I knew that my goal was to have a working career as short as possible, it really impacted the types of jobs I was looking for. I went from working at a gym before I had started this journey to then taking a sales job that I didn't love, but it increased the amount that I was able to save. And I knew that, hey, even if I have to work here for the next 10 years, it's only 10 years and then I'm free for the rest of my life. So I went to a sales commission-based job that didn't quite get me to the number that I needed. My goal was to make around 65K. I could be saving about 40K of that per year and to be able to retire in around 10 to 12 years. 12 if my salary never changed, and 10 assuming I got some raises around the way. So I took my first job in sales. It increased my salary, but because I didn't love selling, I didn't make as much as I could have, obviously, in that role if I was a fantastic salesperson. So then I switched to a tech recruiting job. Still, turns out it's just a sales job where you're selling people, so it didn't do great for me. But from that role, I realized that entry-level junior devs were making exactly that 65K number that I needed, and of course then getting raises along the way. And so I switched into development from after that and used my savings to pay for a dev boot camp. And I want to emphasize that I didn't come from a background where any of this was my plan originally. I first had that FIRE goal in mind, knew what I needed to make to reach this goal, and then started looking for careers that matched after it. Today, I probably wouldn't go to a dev boot camp, right? The landscape of being a junior developer has changed, but I might go to a plumbing school or anything like that if that was a career that made the most sense to me at the time. Putting it in such simple terms that, hey, I just need this one number and I only need to hold that number for 10 years really made it so much more doable than the idea that, hey, I need to find some career with this great career progression, I'm gonna have passion, and you know, whatever. I had a number in mind and that was all I was striving for. So this wasn't all glamorous, but it was intentional and it felt doable to me at the time. And again, that's really the point that I just want to drive home, that by setting yourself up for a realistic FIRE goal and not shooting to say, oh, I can only retire if I have 2 million in the bank, 5 million in the bank. There are lots of people retiring on 650,000, which is a much more doable number to accomplish over 10 years. You just have to develop the right strategy and move from there. So that's my goal. Hopefully it gave you some inspiration to not just completely throw out the idea of FIRE because rich people have made it seem so unattainable. If you don't come from a background of wealth, that doesn't stop you. It just takes to not give up before you even started. I'd love for you to comment down below, what's your relationship with FIRE? Did you feel like it was realistic for you? And please subscribe if you want more videos about escaping capitalism and seeing how you can live a life that is more designed for you and your wants and your needs. Thanks. I'll see you next time.